Right, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the next one, we have panel discussion on advanced software architecture for vehicles. First, I would like to invite on stage our moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Raghavendra Kulkarni, Managing Director, Industry X Mobility SDV Accenture. With nearly 20 years of experience, he advises automotive C-suite leaders on digital transformation and innovative business models. Can we all give him a huge round of applause, everyone? I would like to invite our speakers, Mr. Balaji Sethuraman, Vice President RD, ICF MBC RD India, Vice President R&D, and a member of senior leadership team at Mercedes-Benz. A huge round of applause for him as well, everyone. Next, Mr. Brahmanand Patil, President and Managing Director, Vector Informative India Private Limited, with 24 years of experience in the industry. A huge round of applause, everyone. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Nagesh Poojary, Managing Director, Driving Growth, IPG Automotive India. He is specifically responsible for enabling innovative, scalable simulation solutions for the India automotive context. A huge round of applause for Mr. Nagesh Poojary, everyone. Next, I would like to invite on stage Ms. Radha Nagalakshmi, Senior Technical Specialist, Jaguar Land Rover, with 20 plus years of experience and specialized in system integration. Next, Mr. Jochen Ladwig, CEO and Managing Partner, Nord Consulting GmbH, with 20 plus years of expertise in corporate procurement. A huge round of applause for him as well. And we have our last speaker for the panel discussion, Mr. Muralidhar MK, Senior Director and Head Technical R&D Centers, Marelli, India, with 20 plus years of expertise in leading complex evolving automotive product development. A huge round of applause for everyone.
I was having a coffee outside and, Jochen was saying that the morning panel discussion was quite noisy in the sense, people at the end were not able to hear properly. So I would request the colleagues who are on the end in the stalls, if you could really be a bit silent so that there will be more attention and also interesting conversation that we could have. And the reason that is because you have the thought capital, which is really who is working in the cutting edge premium OEMs in India, and you have the knowledge base, which is tremendously high. And I would say, please request your coordination onto it so that we can make it more as an interesting conversation. Thank you so much. My name is Raghavendra. I lead the software-defined vehicle offering and practice within Accenture. I am an MD taking care of the offering. When we talk about offering, it's about creating a client impact, what we can do as digital natives. And in this panel that we are going to have is a very interesting conversation where we are talking about the architecture which is going to create an impact with SDV. In the sense, we are going to discuss more about the architectural stuff onto it. And I'm going to, on behalf of all of you, I'm going to welcome the great, team here. So I would start with, a quick introduction of the leaders on the dais, as well as what they do in the company. So maybe, Radha, if you could go first and please introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks Raghav for the introduction. So I'm Radha. I'm working as Senior Technical Specialist and I'm leading the onboard software domain in SDV. So this SDV in JLR has recently started and it is primarily centered from India where we are working on developing the entire software platform and also part of the hardware as well. So I come with an experience in the software platform in the infotainment and ADAS areas, and I'm glad to take this discussion further on the SDV with the OEM insights and certain expectations. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Radha. So JLR, while we were preparing for this panel, there was very interesting conversation. Radha said, the entire Tata Group, JLR Group coming together to build the SDV for the future. That's quite inspiring. And in the conversation, I'm going to pick some thoughts of her saying that how they're leveraging the local ecosystem that they're looking into the SDV platform per se. So maybe the next premium brand, Balaji, a quick introduction about you.
Yeah, thank you. And Good morning, everyone, and super happy to be here and also with various team panel members, fellow panel members. I'm Balaji Sethuraman. I lead one of the R&D business areas in Mercedes-Benz R&D in Bangalore. So in my team, I pretty much developed MBOS. We call it's one of our proprietary chip-to-cloud architecture that we develop, and it's, you can say, at some level of flavor of our own SDV stack, and that's something what I'm leading, mostly focusing on interiors and exteriors of the car. Besides, I also take care of semiconductor procurement and also as a data officer, strategizing what we do with respect to data in Mercedes-Benz R&D globally. So that's pretty much what I do. I'm super happy to see how the conversation takes us today. Yeah.
Thank you. I think there's always a need for an orchestration, and one of the key elements of orchestration is your methods and tools. So very happy to have Brahmanand, who leads Vector. So maybe Brahmanand, few words about yourself and what you do.
Thank you, Raghu. Very good morning, everybody. I think it's important to meet up in such events and discuss and hear from OEMs, Tier 1s, and all the ecosystem players. Just to introduce myself, I'm Brahmanand Patil, representing Vector Informatic in India. The region India is what me and my team of 180 engineers work for. Vector, 36-year-old company, just saw the presentation from Basuraj, my colleague heading embedded software. We focus mainly into the tool chain, the embedded software components that are required to build ECUs and test and validate them. In India, our team works for the region, and we get all the support from the global colleagues back in Germany to work with the customers in India. And it's a challenging thing for us, and as well as exciting to be here because we have very interesting mix of global companies working for the global market as well as the local, our own Indian OEMs and Tier 1s really moving up very fast in this new era. So interesting to hear from others.
Thanks, Brahma. So maybe I'll go on the other side. Maybe Murali, a quick introduction about you and what you do in Marelli.
So good afternoon, everybody. I hope the session so far has been quite engaging. My name is Muralidhar MK. In short, everybody calls me MK. I head the technical R&D centers of Marelli, India. And if you do not know what Marelli is, it's basically ex-Fiat R&D from Italy called as Marelli, married with ex-Nissan R&D called as Calzone Kansai. Right? Together we form Marelli. So it's one of a very significant Tier 1 supplier with about 10.5 billion euros. And we work across various product lines, all the way from power propulsion solutions, automated manual transmission systems, various lighting systems, front lighting, rear lighting, the grills, the projection systems, and so on. We are also into electronics product development, various products like cockpit, zonal computers, the body, the display, and so on, right? I mean, we go across the entire gamut of things. As a matter of fact, as a part of our zonal offering, as we speak here today, we already offer an SDV kind of a solution running on a microcontroller based system. So that's where, we are very well connected to the SDV ecosystem, and I'm very glad to be here with all the co-panelists as well as Raghu. And I'll be glad to share my perspectives and impressions on the topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Murali. So maybe Jochen, you have traveled all the way from Berlin to Stuttgart, maybe.
Hey, my name is Jochen. I have 30 plus years by now in electronics. Few years with Mercedes-Benz, where I was heading the electronics procurement and quality. Been with Visteon on the senior leadership board, being responsible for quality and procurement on a worldwide basis. We founded not consulting because the term SDV, this industry hasn't been moving faster ever. And I say, why move slow when you can move fast without stumbling? And what we want to do with our experience with the team is to help our clients navigate that jungle. So what do I have to do and really actively engage them and help them on what has to be done to deliver flawless quality, because the best product doesn't help you. When Shakira goes down every 5 minutes, your instrument cluster goes down, that's a functional safety topic, and on top of it, your brakes start doing emergency brakes where you don't want them to brake. So to prevent all of that, we help our clients to navigate the jungle, not only by giving them a handbook and providing training, but also by active project engagement, being an active partner in terms of Q&A. Hey, we didn't cover it all. And we also do the assessments if they want it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jochen. So Nagesh comes from a very focused area of ADAS as well as the testing and everything. Maybe a few words about yourself, Nagesh.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. So my name is Nagesh Poojary. I head the India operations of IPG Automotive. Basically, I'm a ADAS, machine learning guy. Now I just handle the business and also the center in India. Now, what does IPG do? Basically, IPG is a 40 years old company, but in India it is just 9 months old. Basically, it's incorporated in India to take advantage of the talent pool, because there are a lot of talent, skill set, experts available within one umbrella, and IPG wanted to take advantage of this the Indian growth story. That's why the company is established here in India. So we are in India. We are just not looking at just partnering with our customers, but also looking at developing solutions for the world. So the Indian ecosystem is provides a lot of data as well, which can be used for the world. From the traffic, somebody already mentioned in the previous panel discussion about the value that India can provide. But also we play in the application area of whatever the SDV architecture, which we were discussing all the while. We provide a lot of simulation solutions which can scale and decrease your go-to-market start. The timeline, like normally it is 3 to 5 years. Earlier it was 5 to 7 years. Testing, regulations takes a lot of time. That is where we collaborate with our partners, OEMs, tier ones, to reduce that timeline in terms of providing by scaling in terms of testing. Maybe it is powertrain or ADAS or maybe anything what you mentioned in your, by having digital twins and representing the entire vehicle digitally. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So, team, the next 45 minutes that we have planned to discuss on 3 main topics. One is the topic of architecture. In the sense, we are going to do a little bit more deeper on the architecture part of it. The second, we are going to talk really more about the safety. In the sense, we are going to talk about safety and quality. And the third one, we are also talking about, how do we leverage the ecosystem per se, right? So these are the dominant thoughts that we have. And maybe before I start, few of the things that we have as Accenture is when we talk to most of the CTOs globally, they have a big question in mind. How do I manage my legacy? How do I manage my North Star architecture? How do I really compete into the market? And this is like a conundrum that most of the CEOs have into it, right? It's not a technical, fantasy to create a car, but you need to create a car which can be bought tomorrow. So my first question to our OEM panelists, I'll start with Radha, is that, what are your key considerations when you look at to deliver the SDV promise? In the sense, how do you really look at the architecture so that it can actually deliver the SDV promise?
So when we talk about architecture, right, there were really good slides in the earlier sessions from hardware suppliers and software suppliers with respect to how a full end-to-end architecture looks like. That really sets a very good context. I'll give you probably a slightly different perspective from an OEM side. Now the current vehicles in the market, right, there are at least 70 to 100 ECUs that are present in the current vehicles. And is that all the complication? No. So we have at least 10 different networks that are connecting these ECUs. So talk about CAN, LIN, Ethernet, HDMI, GMSL, all these things. On top of that, we have at least 40 different flavors of software, operating systems that are running on the ECUs. So
that is a scale in one car that we are talking about, and you can imagine how much it takes for an OEM to deliver multiple variants to different global markets and to different customers. Those are the permutations and combinations, right? That is what we are talking about. And behind the scenes. So this is all something, the anatomy of the car. Now, when we go back and see what it takes to deliver this architecture, 200 plus suppliers, 200 plus licensed tools, infrastructure, and dealers, supply chain. So this is all the cost and the efforts that go into. So now everything is again related to architecture, right? So the architecture itself must be a business enabler. It's not just consolidate the ECU and split the ECU, safety. So these are all the things that come later. The architecture itself must be a business enabler. So what it means is we should have just one common architecture across the entire vehicle. And also one common architecture across both cloud and the vehicle. So because we are talking about a lot of cloud technologies, we have seen a lot of presentations where the vehicle connects to cloud, offloads the data, offloads the applications which are less used. So when it comes to all such kind of use cases and the best customer experience, what we need is one common platform and one common architecture across cloud and car. So that is a North Star. And the current architecture, what we have, no offense to any of the OEMs or suppliers, we have evolved to the current architecture with adding all the issues. It is more of an evolution than a revolution, right? Now for SDV, if we have to, at this stage, the architecture has become unscalable to deliver any further experiences. So we need to take a radical shift. It should be a complete, monumental shift of the architecture from the current system to a new common platform.
Got it. So maybe, Balaji, can you take a specific example, if possible, how you are trying to address this complexity of an architecture, whether you would like to take a domain like an IVI or an ADAS and see how the entire vehicle architecture is being future ready or something like that.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of things Radha was telling, and I would say the complex.
I request everyone at the backside to please maintain silence. There's a lot of noise coming out from the backside, so I request everyone to please maintain silence.
Thank you. I would say if you have to take an example, maybe if I take the IVI kind of an example, and at least at Mercedes, we are, for example, we call it as a Mercedes-Benz user experience MBUX. We are already in a third generation, for example, and by the way, we have been having connected cars since 10 plus years and almost close to 15 million vehicles on the road already by next year. The roadmap to SDV for us, like I said, we have our own proprietary operating system that we picked up. It's called MD.OS, we call it. And 4 or 5 years back, when we wanted to make the decision to say which way to go, it was like an Alice in Wonderland moment for us to say, should we do it proprietary or should we go with what is available in the outside market? And then we looked at what is that we are looking from a customer perspective, and at least for a brand promise that we want to offer. We want to offer that kind of a digital luxury to our customer. We want to continuously excite them with new features and ensure that we offer that kind of a hyper-personalized experience. And for that, then we decided we will do this kind of a proprietary operating system, and that is something what we have been doing, like in IVI. But it's not that easy. You have a lot of complexity because some are safety critical. For example, if you have a camera-based application that you have for some parking assistance, Jochen was mentioning about functional safety. So there are also functional safety elements even in an IVI topics that we have. Driver monitoring related elements. So you also need to create certain functional safety islands even in an IVI system. Then you also need certain things which requires a high performance, just like your computer or laptop or what you're normally used to. So if you want a car like an office space, we have WebEx video conferencing possible in Mercedes today. Then that requires a different kind of layering, right? And last year we tried to do a beta integration or a beta version that we launched for a ChatGPT integration, and then you need to have a very flexible architecture which you can push over there and also get a real-time customer feedback through our in-car customer feedback app. So I think how do you do that? Then you need to allow this kind of a multi-OS tenancy that you need to offer, but at the same time have that ability to offer these kind of different applications which have very different requirements. I think a lot of colleagues in the morning talked about how do you abstract it, right? Fundamentally, you try to abstract the hardware layer, try to decouple it as much as you can, right, from the software layer, and that's not easy. And especially like OEMs like us, when we had a lot of legacy, which we are proud of, but at the same time, we also want to modernize it. And because we also have certain customer expectations to be still met and very diverse set of customers, and we also have people who are very digitally savvy, but there are also people from a different generation who like a plain simple luxury element in the car, not very jazzy stuff on the infotainment. So we have a very, very wide ranging customer segments to take care of. So going back to that IVI example, we had these different layers that we were able to offer, and we decoupled that from a very signal oriented architecture to a very service oriented architecture, right? A classic SDV journey. And we also have multiple OSs. For example, we have a QNX for some safety relevant related application, Linux for if you want to have Android based apps that you want to integrate, a third party apps that you want to integrate, right? And we also have functional safety elements where maybe an adaptive AutoSAR may be element. So wherever we can standardize, we standardized. Wherever we are able to leverage like a middleware like some IP, what Patil was presenting in the last presentation, we were able to use it. And wherever we have to create our own middleware, we created it. And this is one where how we decoupled it. And then we had a huge backend infrastructure which can push terabytes of data from our car into what we call as a Mercedes intelligent cloud. And that is something you can say a big business enabler. Because sometimes you only look at, you said IVI, we were able to push a lot of features like that from the backend. One example, if I have to code during the COVID time, we were able to do it in 24 hours, the deployment of the COVID testing centers overnight into the cars in India, for example, right, from our backend infrastructure into our infotainment unit. And that is one example what I can tell. If we are able to achieve that, I think all such a kind of an app can also be developed by a third party ecosystem later. And that is something what you can imagine in the future. I'll take a pause here. Back to you, Radha.
So maybe, that's a great thing that we both have put in. But when I look at not consulting, right, it's like the guardian knot, right? So maybe how would you advise, Jochen, when you have these kind of, cornerstones from a, North Star architecture to managing the legacy? How do you consult your companies or your clients to really take the journey into this transition?
What we usually recommend our clients is to really start that journey early and cross-functional, because it doesn't help you if you just do that journey in a closed procurement shop, in a closed engineering shop, or whatever. If engineering has an idea and now procurement comes, I'm just giving that example, saying, no, I need 3 quotes to get the best price. Great. Guess what happens in that discussion? So start it early, start it together, and really think about where you want to allocate functionality in terms of an architecture. Because, like it was rightly said, you can do a lot of things inside the car with edge computing. And a lot of safety critical things will be delivered there. And that's what I would always recommend. You need that fail-safe layer car. You don't want your smartphone driving your kids to school, right? And you wouldn't say, if you use your smartphone to drive your kids to school, that if it works into 9 out of 10 times, that's good enough for your kids. So just think about that. So doing the onboarding and the offboard, the backend, the cloud, build yourself a strong backend, because you can administrate a lot of things out of the backend. You can deploy functionality in no time. And I just got to add to that experience. I love it with my car. If I park my car, coincidentally, it is a Mercedes, but I was part of that journey as well. and you hit a parking area, and your car asks you, do you want to park? You say, okay, and now it starts all the services, the payment, etc., etc. So you have to create that customer experience. But guess what? It doesn't work without quality. So the ASPICE journey, the functional safety journey, and the cybersecurity journey, your customer will be annoyed if it doesn't work. And again, we help our customers to navigate through that jungle. And obviously, in former times, you gave your Lastenheft to some tier ones. They came back with an answer. You picked the best one, and you said, "Great. Now you have 200 plus suppliers working and being engaged on an SDV. How do you manage those? How do you make sure that the deliveries are there on time?" And that's something we newly addressed with Not. So I won't get into it too much. That'll be time later. But funny story. Sorry, I used that Mercedes story again. But I was supplier quality for electronics, and Frank, you probably know, was my customer, because now it happens as a quality person that your own engineering team is your customer, your supplier. How do you treat that? So we have some answers there. We have some good ideas there. I think they should all be addressed, because the internal customers are the worst.
I think, when you look at all these paradigms that the OEMs are talking about, or what Jochen is talking, there's always a race in this architecture, right? It's no more a tier 1, tier 2. So, Murali, how does, Marelli look into it? Because, if you look at it from an OEM perspective, I think, they really don't want to, they want to chase this out, saying that I don't want to give the control points to an old tier 1 or a tier 2, right? Especially in the software. But what's your perspective in this architecture lay of land? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, so in my view, the definition of an OEM, a tier 1, tier 2 technology supplier, these are all by the virtue of the way the business is running as of date for a certain type of product lines. And as we see, the future is going to be different and everything evolves. I mean, we can learn from adjacent industries. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later today. So it's not so much about what is the role you play in the industry. It is more about what you actually bring on the table, right? Now, anybody who is able to successfully bring the outcomes on the table has a go at it. Now, what are the challenges with respect to this? Why are tier 1 suppliers existing, right? And what is the scale of it? I mean, that's what you need to pay attention to. Most companies, small companies, will not be able to scale to the level a typical automotive OEM exists in terms of being able to support them, stand behind them, manufacture for them, provide support to them all over the place, and stuff like that. At the same time, with the advent of SDV, especially in the application areas, in the services area, in the tools area, in the infrastructure, in standardization, in consulting, there are so many opportunities that have opened up that the entry barrier has reduced dramatically, right? So finally, if I have to sum it up, I would just say whoever has the best capability to offer for the right outcome for any given OEM in an SDV environment, it works. But does the tier 1 completely go away? No. Why? Because you still have a lot of experience that you bring on the table by the virtue of developing the product. Like my colleague here said, it is not simply about writing applications as you do on a mobile phone. It is about making sure that it works all of the time, 100% of the time. So there are certain elements, especially at a systemic level, only the experience can bring on the table, which is a combination of tier 1 and OEM. So sometimes tier 1 now is also called tier 0.5, right? So all of these kind of modifications will happen, but in my view, it is just that whoever gets the best on the table wins.
Fabulous. In the architecture, one of the key elements is to orchestrate the software, whether it is to make, build, or operate, right? So the tools environment plays a big role. And Brahma, the question to you is, if you look at the old world, there's a lot of heterogeneity when you look at the engineering, right? It starts from your MATLAB, your Simulink, your Canoe to
many things, right? So if you look at this world, what Balaji was explaining, that the build to flash, he wants to do it in hours, right? So there needs to be a tremendous, backbone of tooling where there is a symphony that needs to be done. So in this new era of SDV architecture, what's your point of view? Like, how do you think the tool chain and the tool providers are ready for this game?
Yeah, I think the key to that is coming from laying out an infrastructure. You saw in the last presentation when my colleague Patil was presenting, is to bring a end-to-end infrastructure, put it in place, which helps the OEM realize from system description of the architecture to the end, which is like vehicle campaigns, right? To the OTA part, right? Yeah, software factory, there's a certain area that the industry has defined until the point where the software is ready, could be going into any vehicle model. So it's important for the tool suppliers to be ready for this change and to make their tools available for the CI/CD environment. They have to be run headless on a cloud or a server with a command line script, right? So that's something I think most of the experienced engineer here with 20 plus years would have used DOS-based command line or Unix-based command line invocation of the tools. But then the nice GUIs have come in, a lot of graphical representations have come in, which would still be used by the respective engineer to possibly develop in isolation. But when you have to build the software, when you have to test the software, it's important to put everything into the pipeline and run it seamlessly, where overnight, day in day out, the code check-in is happening, the code validation is happening, and the calibration data sets are coming out, whatever the vehicles need, plus very good integration with the backend, with the cloud as well. So the seamless development possibility both on the cloud and for the vehicle is very important, and every tool provider, I think, is enabling their tools for this at the moment on their own individually. But the big task is to put them together, to define this pipeline, the sequencing, to keep the interfacing very clear so that the output coming from a tool A gets into the tool B, or the code generation happens seamlessly, and because there's nobody to sit and debug if there is an issue in translation of these things. So it's important to put these all together. So for an OEM also, as they bring together various suppliers, the best of the suppliers like Murli, MK was explaining, it's important to bring the tool chain as well, put them together to make sure there is seamless integration, seamless execution along in the entire development chain. So every tool vendor is looking at what is the architecture the OEM is defining and how do I enable my tool.
And Nagesh, what's your view when you look at test and validation and mainly the right side of the wheel, right? So when you look at the impact of an architecture, your readiness on test and validation. So what's your point of view and what's your take on it?
Yeah. So thanks, the panelists.
So sorry for the interruption. It's a humble request for everyone standing at the backside. There's a lot of noise coming in here, and there's a lot of complaints coming from all the audience out there. So I request everyone to please maintain silence.
Thank you. Well, let me add on to what Brahma said, but before that, let me provide a bit of context. Recently, I came across a report from McKinsey and Company. They said that the SDV market is going to be around 80 billions. So I think in 2018 it was around 30 billions. So it's kind of more than double, which means that there's a lot of opportunities exist for everyone in this particular space. But then the vehicle, automotive goals are changing, technology is changing, but the end result is, the final result of these opportunities is customer satisfaction. Again, as somebody already mentioned, is quality, safe, secure, reliable as well. The enabler for behind all of this to achieve all of this thing is SDV, as many people talked about it. There's a lot of consolidation happening around kind of ECU, zonal architectures. A lot of software is getting in, and that's where the challenge and the complexity comes in now. now with this software, there's a lot of issues, quality issues, challenges, etc. are coming. But if you look into some of the vehicle recall statistics of late, I think Tesla, through their Model S, Model 3, and also Model Y, they said that around 5.3 million vehicle recalls in the last 2 to 3 years. I think 2022 onwards until September, which is a big number. Stellantis mentioned somewhere around 1.2 million vehicle recalls. Again, these are all software recalls. And then BMW around 14,000. Ford quoted that they made the cost of all these recalls, 44 recalls they had until September last month. That was around 2.3 billion USD. That was the cost. So there's a lot of, because of the software, a lot of software getting into the architecture, there are a lot of issues as well. So earlier we used to say, fix the damn road. Now along with that, probably we should also say, fix the damn code. So there are a lot of inspirations from, as somebody already mentioned, we take inspirations from mobile phones, is the mobile phone on the wheels. Some people even call it as a data center on the wheels. But then the bigger issue right now is more about the quality, safety, and all of those things, which is leading to production delays, vehicle recalls. So at kind of IPG, what we do is that, as Brahma mentioned, we also collaborate with Vector on virtual ECUs. There's a lot of collaboration, of course, required to make it happen. So the issue of quality, the testing is paramount. So if if there is a field issue, then it's very costly. But the issue of if we are able to detect the quality issues before the production, when we get in closer to the production, then it is a 15% costlier than finding it on the table of a developer. So in that context, that's where exactly our focus is. At IPG, what we do is we enable all those developers in this particular space to kind of fast track the testing. So we empower the developers to ensure that all of these cases are kind of caught by providing all those kind of various scenarios, edge cases, legislation related test cases, so that we ensure that this vehicle recalls or maybe quality issues are kind of minimized.
Got it. So I think we can do a bit of segue into standardization, because we spoke about the archetypes on the architecture and then the point of view. So when we look into the industry, there is tremendous impact that standardization has created in the past, in the sense whether it is AutoZar Classic or even, for example, the adaptive AutoZar. So maybe Radha, what's your point of view? Because when you talk about chip to cloud or chip to the continuum that we talk about the data, so where do you think standardization is playing a big role, and what's an OEM point of view? Do we have to foster standardization here, and what's the thought process from a JLR perspective?
Thank you. Yeah, so with respect to standardization, it comes at various levels. So we have interface based standardization. We have something like AutoSAR standards, which just gives some set of rules. We have a lot of standards which have been defined. And today, at least unfortunately, every standard is tied to an organization. So every organization comes with their own flavor of the standard. So where we need to have one standard that works seamlessly across any layer, or any which is not coupled to any organization. And on top of that, so most of these get into a kind of black box level software, right? So when it comes to something like a black box, when we don't have control over the software, how can the software control the vehicle? How can we let software define the vehicle when we don't know how the software works? So we need to have this open source standard plays a key role in most of the standards that we define and deploy. So for example, I think in 2016 or 2017, we have deployed the over-the-air updates on our infotainment platform way back in 2017 in a span of 6 to 7 months. That was all because we had the control on the software. Today, if we have to deploy a software update, it takes a lot. Probably it was much easier to deploy a software update in 1990 on the Mars rover than what we are doing today. So that is the complexity we have. So to get away from that, standardization definitely plays a lot of role. And when it comes to earlier, we have an application.
Which standard JLR is betting on in SDV?
There are definitely a lot of standards. So we are also working with some tier ones to get into the standards. Open source is definitely the way to go for the lower layers, at least for the lower layers. Until the network layers, we are definitely relying on the open source.
Got it. Jochen, what's your perspective on standardization? Because you come from the country where they define standards, right? So.
Yeah, my country is good in defining standards, but setting frameworks, not telling you how to do it. I'll take a little detour here. In former days, you had the luck that the car was out of the plant, it was with the customer, and as long nothing security related broke, you never saw that again. So you could live with, I don't know how good you are in spaghetti, but imagine a plate of spaghetti, put some sauce to it, that's what we call spaghetti code. You pull one spaghetti, you don't know what's going to happen at the end of your system. Try to maintain that now with an SDV for 8 to 10 years. You will always find that spaghetti code again. So just get it right to begin with, I'd say.
Got it.
And on the standards, the open source, and now I'm coming from a customer experience and from what I see with some of our clients. Why do I have to have 580 different charging standards around the world where the only thing I want to do is charge my car and then pay for it? So open source can really help all of us to make life a lot easier without freezing in. Open source has one major obstacle to it, and that is typically the functional safety piece of it and the ASIL piece of it. So I think we as an industry need to pay some attention towards that.
Got it. Brahma, your take?
Yeah, so even AutoSAR code is delivered, right? The source code is delivered. There is nothing black box in that. So, but yes, I think open source definitely fits when you are talking about application. But when you have to define a vehicle OS, you need something very reliable because this is going to stay longer, right? And it has to also take new applications and bridge both worlds. The automotive world, which is what I call automotive, is the network, the layers below in the vehicle, which is very critical data, real-time data, plus give the advantage of the flexible IT world. So it has to be the right mix. Coming to the question of what's the right thing to do, I think what every OEM is looking at the moment is to look at their use cases. Why SDV? What is the advantage we are bringing to the customer, the end consumer, with an SDV? And of course, we as an OEM want to really bring the latest technology to the consumer, right? Not make them wait for the new model. So, but then when they define with these use cases their vehicle OS, the base layer, that's precisely when they decide, what do I choose? Who do I tie up for the next, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, right? So am I going to bring in a Linux there? Am I going to bring in an AutoSAR, adaptive? A combination of these is what definitely is required, but then Android definitely as well, then a lot of things there. So there is the service world, there is the signal world, and how do we bridge that? So when they do that, they precisely want to define where I go with a standard, which is helping me bring applications on top, gives me that freedom in the future as well to maybe get the best of the supplier, change the supplier if required, because it's going to be a longer life for the software than the vehicle, and make the best use of both open source standards, be available for the entire market. No OEM is looking at an SDV as a local market. Even as we speak today, Indian OEMs are bringing their SDVs out, right? The SOPs would start as early as end of this year, and maybe next year in 2026, we will see a lot of our own very OEMs bringing their SDVs in their own way to the market, and they are not targeting just India.
They are looking at the export market to Europe, to Americas, right? So they have to be ready with the, the set standards there, be it charging standard, be it, any, V2X standards for that market. So to make the entire base layer compatible for that, they have to have the right mix of both standardized as well as, non-standard software.
Got it, got it. So Murli, when I was also working for a tier 1, right, standardization helps us in economies of scale, right? Because when I develop my components, but now if you look at it, there's a dilemma that can I standard, cannot standard. So from a tier 1 perspective, right, how would you create a flexible, operating models with your OEMs, right? How do you really incorporate it in the architecture so that you're both the standard and non-standard base? Yeah.
So, in my view, in some ways, standardization is the opposite of creativity. So, both can coexist, in my opinion, right? I mean, so when you have a certain environment where layer by layer you create a certain standard interface. For example, if I have to shake hands with you, this is the way I do it, right? It is well defined. But what goes behind on either side is left to the creativity of the individual companies, I would say. So in my view, OEMs have to play a very vital role along with the consortium, along with the industry forums and stuff like that, in defining these interfaces very well, and also in defining how this is verified or validated, how in a structured way the development happens. In my view, the whole process of development, the whole process of validation, the whole interface standardization, at least up till certain level, is what is necessary. Now beyond that, behind these interfaces, behind these ways and means of doing things, how each company builds its own creative and innovative solution is up to the respective companies, and their success will depend on how they are able to do both of it.
Got it, got it. So Balaji, you mentioned about service-oriented architecture in the in-vehicle infotainment, while you see most of us talking about standardization on the onboard, right? So when we talk to most of the OEMs, there's always a cost to serve, and the cost of the cloud is tremendous when you try to do it. So when you do this standardization, do you also think that there has to be standards which also have to be applied for an off-board, topics? Just your views onto it, right?
Yeah, I will go with like what Murli said. I think you need to have a balanced approach. There is a area where you want to bring a lot more innovation. I think especially the layers where you want to offer that kind of differentiation in terms of customer experience, the kind of hyper-personalized experience that you want to offer to the customer. I think that's, if you can say, the kind of a SaaS layer that you want to probably hold control over. But we also work with hyperscalers, for example, whether it's with Microsoft Azure, we work with AWS, we also work with Google GCP in some Western region, and in China, for example, with Tencent. So we work with different hyperscalers, but then, which means we should be a little bit more infra agnostic depending on the kind of a market that we serve, the region that we sell our cars. But then where do we then bring that level of platformization? So we actually then created a certain core platform for us for our cloud computing in terms of ensuring this backbone for us in terms of a connected vehicle. We are able to offer a very reliable 99.8%, 9% level of availability and reliability in terms of, that's something, that is a kind of a core platform that we want to build. And on top, so there, some standardization offered by these hyperscalers, and then we need to have our own element to ensure that we have a reliable operation, because that is also a quality that our customers would experience with respect to Mercedes, not just sometimes only the onboard experience, but also sometimes how long it takes for a map to get updated, for example, right? So that is also experience. So even the offboard element dictates the customer experience at some level. And then at a, I would say at a applications level, then it's again a lot of architecture to say how do you use it. For example, we use a kind of a container-based microservices, with a mesh architecture, zero trust philosophy. So that's a kind of a differentiator in terms of how we also take care on the offboard. So you can say a balance between how much layers of standardization you do, but then where you want to differentiate for your customer experience. So that's how I would say a balanced approach is how we take for the offboard.
Got it, got it. So I think we have 15 minutes left, so I'll park 5 minutes for question and answers from the audience. But can we get into a topic of, the quality and security? I'll stay with you, Balaji. If you look at it, you have to build an architecture which is safe and secure, because there are multiple points of vulnerability that gets into the safety of an individual, right? So what are the key strategic tenets that you consider when you are designing an architecture for security?
Good question. So at least for us at Mercedes, this is one of the fundamental elements, right? So as a brand promise, I would say what we have always been known for is, say, a safe and secure, reliable car. And that's kind of given the moment you say the name of the brand. And so for us, it is always like whether the security by design, safety, like safety first principle, even privacy by design. So these are elements that have to be incorporated right from the initial ideation process, thinking process. You may say, yeah, we are getting slower, maybe we are not as faster as in launching some safety relevant topics over the air, like some of our competitors. You may question it, but when we launch it, we want to be sure that even those corner cases, it would work, right? For example, we are, when we are now doing a over-there update, even a safety function like an automated lane change in Europe, completely over there for millions of our cars. But we are going to be 100% sure that this will work even in all these different kind of corner cases in that particular market. That is one. Second, of course, adhering to some of the state-of-the-art technology that I think everybody will do in terms of the product liability, whether it's a cybersecurity requirement or the SAMS regulation, what we have to fulfill, the UNR 155, 156, and so on. For automatic lane change, maybe 157. So I think that is the second part of the regulatory requirement. And then I would say within Mercedes, we have set our own internal standards, sometimes standard that we want to be known for. And we have our own, what we call an MBN standards, or Mercedes-Benz Norman. And you are telling, maybe Jochen may know a little bit. So sometimes we always question to say, oh, are we over engineering? But that's a brand promise that we want to keep, to say we want to also have a standard sometimes higher than what the normal regulatory expectations are. Yeah. So
Jochen, you were laughing, right? So this is quite a scarce talent, right? In the sense, advising somebody on a security and making it foolproof. So what's your experience? How do you build an architecture which is more secured, and what are your key tenets that you look at it, right?
And I'm going to take that from the quality side as well. Again, in my other roles that I had in the industry, I had the inside view, but I had also this view from a tier 1 supplier. And what you can observe is that safety and security and functional safety sometimes is an afterthought. So you see a lot of people and still management taking a look at these aspects and saying, no, I want to see the functionality. We got to be moving quick to the market. We got to be first to market. And now in my quality roles, guess what? If safety becomes a balcony, before you build the house without the basement ready, you will pay the price for it. You will pay the price for it. You will have task forces. You will have extraordinary efforts. We just heard a lot about recalls. Yeah, there's plenty of those. They are expensive. The best thing is giving you just another example, somebody optimizing booting times for a NAS system, right? They wanted to hit 1.7 seconds. They hit 1.6. They were all happy. They turned on security. They were at 21 again. So redo the whole thing. So the compromise, it's a management task, to be honest. Allowing your people to do the right thing at the right time, at the right speed, without being late. I call it why being slow when you can be fast without stumbling. And that's what we help our customers with, to find out that individual path, because it's really different for every tier 1 OEM, because everybody has its systems. So you got to blend in instead of saying you need something new. No, you got to blend in and get that awareness out and set the cornerstones so that awareness becomes daily usage.
Fabulous. So I think maybe Brahma, you started saying that most of the OEMs are not just coming to India just for the market, but also looking at the talent as well as the design in India. So can you just throw light, because we have been in many conversation wherein we have also spoke to some global CTOs together. So what's your view? Like, what does this talent mean, and how design in India can become a North Star? So maybe a few words about how SDV can be led from front from us.
Definitely. So we have a good representation here, 2 OEMs, tier 1, we as well here, and of course consulting. You see on this and you, the biggest engineering service and consulting company here. So when you look at automotive, of course, there have been companies in the past who have built talent in India over years, right? It has not happened in a day. They've taken a lot of time. They have kind of looked at how do they look at outsourcing within their organizations from headquarter to India, and they have built people, right? So I still remember my early years at Bosch. I was taught how engine works, right? Not about software. I was a software engineer. So that level of ingrainment has happened on the engineers who have evolved over years. And yeah, it's been 3 decades now. You see also the new generations coming in automotive as well. Aspiring, right? India is a place, a lot of things happen in IT side. We are known to the globe as an IT hub. But then automotive, there were these companies who quietly ramped up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, now even more than 10,000 in each of these global companies, while newer companies are coming. So IPG came to India this year. So we as Vector, we are here for the last 15 years. So everybody is looking at India. Now, if you look at the ecosystem here, what is required for an SDV, we have heard a lot since morning. It's the best of all the worlds, right? So we need the IT world, the cloud, the backend. We need the HMIs of the world. We need, then coming into automotive, the CAN, Lin to, legacy software, even not even AutoSAR, that knowledge to everything, right? So put them all together in a room. Then you can realize an SDV. So India is a place where you can build such teams. Either if you are looking at building them within the organization, you can get everybody in. Just now we were hunting for DevOps experts in Vector. It was easy to hire because there are a lot of IT companies doing DevOps in India, right? In automotive, we are talking about it now, right? So we could do that in India faster than our colleagues in Europe, right? So there they have to explain a lot to the IT guys and tell them why they have to come. Here in India, it's easy to bring them on board. So we have the right talent here, semiconductor as well, I missed that. So there are a lot of companies doing a lot of work on semiconductor in India. Hyderabad is a big base for semiconductor engineers doing design for, I don't know, more than 3 decades already in India. So the best thing to do is put them all together. Bring the best of the talent, put them together, start the journey of SDV, you'll be able to hit. So that's what I've seen. And also I have very good example of our own local OEMs. While the global OEMs have large teams in India, and you heard from Radha, there's a common team set up for JLR and Tata Motors in India. So our own OEMs are also looking at bringing the best of the talent, whether it's in India or abroad, and virtue of that, everybody is looking at in India. Correct. They want to be in India with the best engineers, and it's easy to ramp up. So if they have chosen, I don't know, a small player in Austria or in Israel who had no connect even to automotive, and they want to bring them on board because of SDV requirement, it was easy because they had to just connect with them. And then they were, within few months, they were present in India with their own team here. So that's the power of India. So I'm not just reiterating what IT world says. I think this is happening in automotive, and it's a wonderful thing.
Right. So maybe rather picking up what Brahma said, can you just elaborate on how you are collaborating with the India ecosystem, with your various brands? Every time your mic goes
sleep
silent.
Actually. Yeah. Okay. So we have, earlier we were talking only about suppliers and customers, right? Now the terminology itself has changed. We talk about partners. So where we really don't look at someone as suppliers, where they deliver some black box and OEMs integrate, and that concept, we are at least, not for every issue, but for most of the cases, we are moving away from that. we are partnering with a lot of, I don't want to call tier ones or suppliers, but with a lot of organizations, mainly from the Tata ecosystem. So Tata has a lot of tentacles to it, right? So the Tata Consultancy Services, Tata Technologies, and Tata LXCC, and also we have the Tata Semiconductors, which have started recently. So that is where we are partnering as a Tata team. Having said that, it's not just the Tata team that we are partnering with. We are also partnering with Vectors. We have Infineons. We have a lot of other hardware and software suppliers who we are partnering with. So we basically get into a partnering model where we co-develop and collaborate to deliver a product, rather than no OEM or no company can deliver something all alone.
So Jochen, your view from a lens of European to an Indian, how do you find the Indian ecosystem?
See, I think the Indian ecosystem has all the ingredients you need to really grow. And my India experience is more than 20 years. So I think I come back to that smartphone that drives your kids to school. Somebody said it earlier, do that in India, you can do it everywhere. And you have a great talent pool here of people that really know what they do, that can go over the edge and blend in. So period, it's a great country with great opportunities.
Fabulous. Any questions that you want to ask to the panel, please? Maybe Mike, can somebody give the mic to the gentleman there?
Very much for this insightful discussion. Coming back to the question on open source as one of our way forwards, with regard to functional safety, and just imagining taking an embedded Linux kind of a core and trying to build functional safety on it. Just want to know your thoughts on how that can be done, because it looks like they are two opposites. Very, very challenging to get functional safety done for the entire of the Linux kernel. Just wanted to hear from you.
We already have Safe Linux or Linux for Safety delivered from at least 2 or 3 suppliers. Are you aware of that by any chance? So we have Red Hat Linux, we have Electrobit, and we have other technology providers who are working towards the safety of the open source components. And similarly, on the RTOS side as well, we definitely have certain open source RTOSs that are safety compliant or safety certified. However, it is not as mature or as vast as the current AutoSAR, which has been there, or QNX, which has been there for the last 40 years. There are definitely a lot of investments going on from different partners, from different organizations to get to that stage where the open source itself becomes a mature safety model, safety and security, by the way.
Any other questions?
Hey, hello everyone. Wonderful panel discussion. Hey, Brahma. I think we've invested a lot into functional safety architecture, cybersecurity architecture, and quality management systems as organizations, right? Because we are maturing now when you compare to safety and security. Now, software-defined vehicle is coming as a huge paradigm shift to the industry, right? So where neither the suppliers, as Radha ma'am rightly said, you cannot think now as a supplier, but you'll have to think as partners. But one of the challenges we've seen often is the onus of qualification and certification mostly lies on, for a COTS type of environment, on the small suppliers. But we don't have visibility to the higher level safety and security architectures, right? And that's a gap we've been trying largely to build. But how do you envisage a partnership where a standard architecture can be made transparent across this supply chain, right? And how do we come together as an industry where OEMs and tier ones and consultants come together to solve this debacle for the SDV specifically, not to repeat the noodle mistake which we did earlier for safety and security. Yeah, thank you. This is probably anybody, and most of you can answer this. Thank you.
Balaji?
Let me make an attempt. And so how can new players come into a very regulatory, strict landscape? I would say there are different areas where I don't know where you're operating, but I can take a couple of examples where there are even newer possibilities of players coming into the SDV landscape. For example, with a kind of a connected ecosystem with the SDV, software-defined vehicle with a very strong backend, when you're offering when you're able to capture data, for example, you can even think about new startups that are even utilizing this data and even creating new, new businesses out of it. And if I can talk about one specific example, maybe insurance is a very commonly known example today. As simple as the vehicle status and the odometer driving pattern, if you're able to just push that back into the cloud, and if that data can be shared, and probably you're, in UK we have a pilot with a startup called Buy Miles, and where you're able to do a pay-as-you-go insurance, for example, right? So there you don't need there are some areas where you don't need to understand the regulatory elements. All that you need to know is a typical RESTful API interfaces, which are standard, and then you are good to go when you are able to, and then there is an SDK, then you can build something on your own, right? Depends on which space that you want to operate in. There are regulatory relevant elements and there are non-regulatory relevant areas of business, and I would say it all depends on which part of the business that you want to partner with in the SDV world. And there are two things. One, we talked a lot about what is in terms of SDV, in terms of ingredients and different layers of architecture, but it's also about how we develop that, and that's where Brahma and Nagesh talked about in terms of the overall shift left with respect to virtualization, the different way of how we even develop the software. There also there are a lot of standards and regulatory elements that we have to build in, and there are also new player possibility also in terms of how we develop and business opportunities for new players, right? Including consulting, what Jochen was mentioning. I think it depends on your, where you want to play, and I think then you can always figure out whether it's a regulatory relevant element or not. But there is more and more openness coming in the automotive ecosystem is what I could imagine right now.
A very important question and very interesting as well. Recently there was a report which mentioned that most of the vehicle recalls are also issues are because of the component integration and testing. It's kind of quite rampant. So there are a lot of efforts as of now to solve this kind of issue. For example, if you're a tire supplier, what is the impact of that tire on the ADAS kind of functionality? So there are a lot of frameworks and platforms are being kind of addressed at this point in time, but it's very, let's see how it goes.
So just one perspective, right? If we are talking about a legacy architecture where every organization or every supplier is working in silos for each of the ECU, then getting the full visibility for anyone is practically impossible. That is what we are trying to solve with SDV, where we try to consolidate the architecture, where we try to, as an operational model, we try to partnership right from day one, so that everyone has the visibility on the entire architecture. Now even for the hardware side, we are moving to a hardware or an SoC where there are microprocessors and controllers integrated together. So it becomes a common platform where everyone can have a better visibility as well.
Okay, I think given the time, thank you so much. Just a quick summary. We did speak about the key tenets of the architecture to begin with. And the spaghetti was the popular one because it gave a recall to most of you. SOA, that is service-oriented architecture, is also what we looked into when we discussed about it. The prospective or the elements of tire 0.5, what Murali mentioned about, is another way to look at how the disruption is happening onto it. And then finally, the icing on the cake was what Brahma mentioned. So it's probably after the invention of the IC engines, it's the first time where we as digital natives have a tremendous impact that we can create in the automotive industry. So I think we should really leverage for each other, leverage for our companies that we work, and also create an impactful SDV to the automotive fraternity. So with this, I thank Murali, Jochen, Radha, Balaji, Brahma, Nagesh for a fabulous thought capital discussion. And if you have any questions, they are available and you can have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raghu.